Welcome to Black Daddy Country Club, another episode for you. Today's guest is Mr. Rashad Bowtie Mills, a Baltimore native on a mission to uplift and motivate, whether it's mentoring at-risk youth, delivering keynote speeches, or advocating for mental health. Known for his signature bow tie, symbol of professionalism and confidence, he's made a lasting impact on the community and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Rashad Bowtie Mills.
Man, listen, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I like the outfit you got on.
Yeah, man. I knew I was going to be talking about dad, so I thought I would wear something that really symbolizes who I am as a father.
Okay.
My twins and where they go to high school and play ball. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where they
at City College, at
Okay.
Baltimore City College, sophomore twins, Kennedy and Chloe Mills. When I speak about them, man, I glow.
Yeah, I
glow.
can see it.
Yeah, I absolutely glow, man.
I
So
can see it, man.
again, I'm so thankful to be on talking about things that are near and dear to me.
No doubt.
Being a father, black dad.
Yeah. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your yourself, your upbringing, profession.
Sure. Let's start with professional. What I do professionally. So I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, aka a therapist, right? Which is a profession that I sort of fell into it. It wasn't one that I grew up saying, man, I'm gonna be a therapist when I grow up,
Okay.
right? Because growing up in Baltimore City, a therapist and therapy, they didn't fit into my lexicon. What is that, right? So I fell into it. By the grace of God, it just fell into my lap, and it's something that I do now, seeing by probably about 8 to 9 clients throughout the course of a day. Originally, I was brought up with the thought that I would be this great athlete, but God never gave me, those fast twitch muscles. And so I realized that I had a gift for speaking. I always grew up in the church speaking and doing things of that nature. So I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, which I actually did for 2 years in Oregon.
Okay.
And due to some personal challenges that I was dealing with, battling alcoholism, I had DUI, and they said, Rashad, we love you, but you got to go back to Baltimore.
Yeah.
And so I came back to Baltimore and started doing teaching assisting. I had a cousin of mine that works at one of the local schools here, and she said, why don't you be a substitute teacher? This is great. So I said, well, let me apply for Teach for America. I'm a black man with a college degree. I'm a shoe-in.
Mm-hmm.
No, it didn't happen. And I said to myself, now what do I do? And I vividly remember I was walking at this school, walking up and down the halls with a second grade class at Mount Royal Elementary Middle. And it was a kid. And I said, man, why do you do some of the things that you do? He said, Mr. Mills, I know exactly what not to do. My brain tells me what not to do, but I always do the opposite. And it was like an aha moment. It was like, man, I need to reach kids at a different level. Teaching is not it, because at that point I'd already been declined.
Right.
And so to make a long story even short, went and applied for Johns Hopkins University, and then therapy has been my thing ever since. A native of Baltimore, I had the opportunity to live in Bend, Oregon when I was a sports broadcaster, live in Philadelphia. But Baltimore is a place that I call home. And man, I'm just excited to be a professional speaker, right? Speaking about topics, my life experiences, mental health, and being a therapist, man, because I see the growing need for therapy in communities of color, the people that look like you and I.
Yeah, no doubt. Can we touch on the stigma of mental health in general, especially in the Black community, especially amongst men, right? Usually, and I don't want to generalize, but usually within our community, it's give it to God, pray about it, right? But you're a mental health therapist, right? How does your faith and profession mix?
It's a great question. Really good question. I think it's this intersectionality of faith and spirituality. I don't think that they have to be off in a distance by themselves. I think there can be this healthy mingling of the two, right? Historically, growing up in a Christian background, as a matter of fact, my church that I grew up in literally is a stone's throw away from me at Gillis Memorial Church.
Okay, all right.
Because I grew up for the first 7 years of my life, 4633 Park Heights Avenue. So with that being said, I think it's a healthy mingling of the two, because there has been this historical part, pray about it, pray about it, pray about it. But I think as we've grown as a community, we understand that I can pray about it, but I can still have a therapist.
Yeah.
I can still use the Bible as a guide for my spiritual life. But then if I need psychotropic medications, I can take those, right? I can go to a Bible study, but then I can also be in group therapy.
Yeah.
And there is a merging of the two, because I think that we see now that even in the Bible, we become more aware there was mental health challenges that occurred right in the Bible, right? People being anxious, depressed, individuals saying, I wish God would take my own life. This is the Bible. So if it happened in the Bible, then why wouldn't we recognize it in modern day terms? And they don't have to be separate. And many of the people that go to church, pastors and other people that hold these positions, they need mental health just to deal with the things that they are dealing with in the church. So it's a healthy colliding of the two. And me, I make sure that I have a healthy balance. I have a therapist, but I'm in my word, right? There's some things that's in my word that I might not get the answer, but my therapist may be able to give me an answer. And there's certain things from a spiritual perspective I don't expect my therapist to give me because I have, a relationship with God. So we can mingle the two.
That's deep because I've never heard it like that. The fact that if you read the Bible, mental health is an issue in the Bible.
Absolutely, right? It is.
I never connected that to.
Absolutely, it is.
And you're right. You hear it. Yeah. And passages, in the Bible, it's like, I never put those two together.
Jesus was anxious.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus wasn't, I think he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's literally saying, take this cup. Jesus wasn't really like jumping to that. Jesus was anxious because he knew the ramifications of what, God had sent him to earth to do. So yeah, if Jesus was anxious, why can't Rashad be anxious? And if Rashad is anxious, why can't Rashad have a therapist?
Right.
So yeah, absolutely.
So that is a true thing, that therapists have therapists.
Absolutely.
And it's a must.
It's a must.
Because we're all human, right?
We're all human.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah. How can I show up for anybody else if I can't show up for myself?
Yeah. And then having to show up for your kids as well.
Absolutely.
And your family.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Being a therapist, mental health therapist, how does that impact your family life? How am I saying this? How can you, I guess, dissect the two of dad and mental health clinician, right?
It's really interesting because as my kids have grown and they've reached probably I would say about the age of 13, the level of conversations that we have, Rashad is still dad. I'm always in dad mode. But Rashad, the therapist, is showing up in that same space as well based on their growth, right? And so they are encountering things in high school, right? That have give them certain amount of challenges. And Rashad, the therapist, is showing up in the same sense as Rashad, the dad is showing up at the same time to kind of help them navigate the challenges. And we talk about real life things.
Okay.
They've talked about classmates saying, Dad, I have a classmate that's on medication, and they told me. One of my kids the other day talked about her current space on the basketball team. She's not playing as much as she would like. I'd like to. And she said, Dad, this season is making me anxious. And we talked about anxiety. We've talked about depression. One of my kids in 8th grade, the oldest of my twins, she went through a spell, some behaviors that weren't like her. And I said, do you think we should consider you going to see a therapist? And she said, no, Dad, but I know you're a dad, you're a therapist. I know why you mentioned that. I'm good. So we have these conversations. When my kids get in the car, how was your day? When they say, Dad, it was good, what does that mean?
Right.
What does that mean?
You gotta expand on that.
Your food is good, but you can't be good.
Yeah.
And so that's Rashad, the dad, and the therapist. I want to know what that really means. So again, they meet, and I try to balance them out. Sometimes it's just Rashad, the dad, is listening. And then sometimes it's Rashad, the therapist, and I'm offering different things to them as if they were a teenage client, but yet they happen to be my twin girls. And then sometimes it's this great, again, this intersectionality that Rashad is being the therapist along with being the dad, because I think, this, right? I think fatherhood lends itself to us wearing multiple roles, not just the role of dad. And so the role of the therapist comes into play, because these are these years where kids experience a lot of different things, right? They're 15, they have cycles now, and emotionally they're all over the place. So yeah, I'm definitely the therapist and the dad. And on any given day, one may show up a little bit more than the other.
Okay. I was about to ask, is there ever a conflict between dad and therapist. Like, maybe I need to back off a little bit. I'm being more therapist right now than a dad right now.
I've learned that.
Okay.
I think at some point, I was at different times, I was more dad. And then I learned to peel back sometimes and just be therapist. And if I'm therapist, sometimes I'm not offering anything. I'm listening, right? And then there's some times where I'm just dad because I have a tendency to talk a lot. I'm a speaker, right? And so I've learned that in both of those roles, kids need us to listen a lot more. And I take opportunities, the rides home to school and from school. I take those opportunities to listen a lot.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes I believe our kids tell us what they need, but we have to listen.
Yeah.
And that's the same approach that I take with my clients as well.
Yeah. One thing that you had mentioned about one of your twins being anxious or upset, not getting as much playtime. That just, when you said that, sent me back to my childhood. Because I grew up playing sports, right? And I never forget, I was playing Pop Warner football, man. And our team was horrendous. Like, we were bad, bro. It was like, and I played running back, and it was like 3 in and out. 3 in and out. I'm like, yo, what is this going on? I spent most of my time standing on the sidelines because he was just in and out, in and out. And I was, like your daughter, I was upset, man. I was livid. And my dad had the foresight to, come up to me and be like, well, what's going on? What's wrong? And I was like, man, I'm not even playing. Like, I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out. And I never forget. He was like, you want to play more? You don't want to come off the field? And I was like, nah. After that season, my dad took me training. I was already running back. He showed me how to play the quarterback position. Showed me how to punt. Showed me how to kick. He was a defensive back himself. Showed me how to play defense, right? Throwing crossbody blocks and all that at an early age. Come back the following season, dude, I never came off the field. I played offense. I played defense. I was on special teams. I was on offense. I was the running back and the backup quarterback, right? I never came off the field. And I loved it, right? But when I look back at it now, he pretty much set me up for life the way that I am now, right? And throughout my professional career, I've done so many different things. One thing he used to say to me all the time is try to make yourself indispensable. Sorry. And what he was meaning is if you're on a job, and that job is laying people off, right? If this is the only job you know how to do, your ass getting laid off, right? But if I can pivot, if I can do this, but I can do that too. Oh, by the way, I know how to do this. You're not getting rid of me. I'm too valuable. And that's the lesson that I took from that. And it shaped my adulthood because I do so many different things, right? Even when I was working in higher education, I worked in higher education for 16, 17 years. But within that 16, 17 years, I worked in enrollment management. I worked in admissions. I worked in athletics. I worked in academic advising. I worked in campus recreations. I worked in marketing and communications, right? All of those different areas, I had a skill set in that I was able to help, right? And so that's the life lesson that I took from playing Pop Warner football, right? At an early age, and it just, it carried me through life.
But the great equalizer there was your dad.
Yeah.
Having dad sort of, number one, recognize my son is on the sidelines, something is wrong. So he had a level of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And then him sort of offering a suggestion, not, just screaming, hey, you should be in the game, this, that, or the third, offering a suggestion, and then coming up with some additional help.
Yeah.
And the resources. So those are all the things that dads, right? Dads offer. And it's the same with moms, but I think it's just something different when dad does it. I think it's like I don't know, it feels like kids feel even more confident about certain things because you got like the hero. Dad is a protector. Dad says, man, just, become a person that you can't get off the field, and you developed all these skills, and now you on the field 24/7, right? So that was a great equalizer, dad being present.
So I want to move into this question because you do a lot. You wear a lot of hats, right? What do you do for yourself, right? That self-care portion of it. Because your dad, right? You're the therapist, right? You're the community activist, right? You're active in the church. But when do you have the time? When do you find the time? And then what do you do for yourself?
I make the time because time is not always available.
Right.
So when people say, well, the time is available, it's rarely that I have blocks throughout the course of my schedule that are just open. So I'm very intentional, right? I'm very, very intentional about making the time. And when I make the time, I try to engage in the following: something spiritual, start my day with something spiritual, right? Reading the word, prayer. That's an element of self-care for me. I try to have a physical component every day, whether I'm working out in the house, I'm going to the gym, I'm getting back to the game of golf you and I talked about. So I know that's going to take up a great portion of my time.
It's going to take up a lot of your time, bro.
Right. That, and then I try, a part of my self-care to a degree is my involvement with my kids and their stuff. But I'm very mindful about that, right? When I say mindful about that, because I have to have something aside from the kids. So a spiritual component every day, a physical component every day. And then if nothing else, I try to make at least bare minimum 5 or 10 minutes where I can engage in reading. I'm a big nerd. I like to read. And maybe watch some mindless TV, right? I'm a big sports fan, so maybe it's one game Sunday, right? I'm watching this for 3 hours, or a college game, or I'm watching some kind of series on Netflix or something. So I try to give myself those outlets to get away from everything, because one thing that I notice is I pay attention to my body, and when I'm really, really involved with a lot, which seems like the norm for me, church, fraternity life, dad, and all these other things, man, my body will tell me it's time to get away.
Yeah.
It's time to get away. And just the nature of being a therapist, I'm listening for 7 to 8 hours a day. Some pretty challenging stuff. So my body says, man, you got to get away.
It gets pretty draining mentally.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were mentioning golf, man. I had to pull this out for you right here. See a little. had to pull this out for you right here, brother.
Okay.
And this is from y'all tournament too.
Okay.
Shout outs to Phi Beta Sigma. Thank you
for that. Incorporated.
Yes, Fraternity Incorporated. Sorry
Absolutely.
But yeah, that
you just wanted you wanted to make sure I knew.
I wanted to make sure you knew, bro. Yeah, I had to make sure you knew.
I see it. I see it.
So I would actually love to do an episode while playing golf. So
that would be dope.
I think so.
That would be dope.
And might be able to do it at the tournament. Maybe we on a team together. We can do it at the tournament.
I'm a recruit you heavy.
Yeah, man. I love the game of golf. For me, golf runs parallel with life. It's taught me so many different things. How to, patience, right? Checking your ego at the door, right? Being able to assess. We're always running a mile a minute. My mind is always running a mile a minute. Sometimes I can't even keep up with my mind. But golf taught me to take a step back, look, assess your surroundings. Right, I'm sitting under a tree right now. What's the likelihood that I'm gonna hit this ball on the green? Not too likely. But when I first started, I thought I was Tiger Woods, man. I was trying 10, 11, 12-foot tree. I'm trying to get that ball up and over the tree. And you hit it and they're just ricocheting, ping pong, and now you can't even find the ball, man. Had I just slowed down, took a step back,
chipped out,
right? It would have been a better round for me, right? That's what golf taught me. So I'm forever grateful for the game of golf. And I encourage anyone, any and everyone, to get involved with it. It's never too late. Get your kids involved with it, right? I love walking the course. I don't necessarily get a golf cart all the time. I'll walk it because it just gives you that time in nature and just to exercise as well, but it gives you that time in nature to just slow down and relax and just take everything in, right? So I'll walk, but you
it's a beautiful game. I'm excited to get back into it.
It is, man. It is. Yeah. So I want to talk about trauma, right? Because we all have it, right? Some sorts of it. Some people may have a lot. Some people may have a little bit, whatever. But we all have some sorts of trauma, right? But as parents, as fathers, as Black fathers, we don't want to pass those traumas on to our kids, right? And I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago. I was like, sometimes, as adults, we have to unlearn things, right? And things that we've learned from our childhood, from past experiences. We have to unlearn those because they're not healthy. They're common to us and they're familiar, but not necessarily healthy, right? And so knowing this, how do we not pass those on to our kids?
I think it's a great question because trauma is running rampant in all communities, right? And I think in communities of color, we're still growing, right, in the sense of trying to reduce the stigma of therapy. But there's still a long ways to go, right? And it's a long ways to go because there's some traumas that we can see on a daily basis just in some of our communities, right? And so I think that one of the ways that we don't pass it on, it has to be an identification that the trauma exists. And I think that's where a lot of the challenges come into play at, because we have normalized it and we're getting a lot better, but we have normalized certain things. And if we normalize it, then we can't break it because it's just normal. This is what happens in the Black household. Abuse goes on in the house and nobody talks about it. Dad has a problem with drinking, but nobody talks about it, right? And these are just examples, but we normalized it. And as long as we normalize it, we can't break it. So I think a part of it is identifying it. And then once we identify it, we have to be able to find what one of my great friends, William Batts, phenomenal social worker, has always taught me the saying, finding a blind spot. And I think there's so many blind spots that we can't see. And if we can't see it, then we're still driving into what I call accidents. Once we recognize this is a blind spot, then we can make some shift to kind of change it. How do we do that? I think we have to have professionals to help us, i.e. the therapists, the social workers, right? So we can break these kind of things, because if I went to therapy and I recognize, Rashad, you got some stuff with you that I normalize, then now when I'm talking to my kids, I'm not going to normalize it because I know this isn't right. And then it's not passed down to them. And then in turn, it's not passed down to their kids, which would be my grandkids. And we can break these generational curses. I saw something the other day that said, if we can have generational trauma, can we have generational healing? And it was really deep. And in essence, I think we can, but I think we have to continue to, once we find it's there, like a trauma, I think we got to be able to realize that it's okay that it was there, but it's not okay for it to continually exist. Because I think we do recognize a lot of things in our households, in our communities, in our workplaces. Man, this isn't right. This is not right. But we just kind of, okay, let's just keep living in the status quo. And that continues this sort of these unhealthy cycles. So identification, And then once we identify that there's something there, we have to do something. We got to do something with it and not just allow it to continue.
Yeah. So why do you think that it is such a cultural stigma for us? Like, I don't know where it comes from. I don't understand it. Right. So could you speak on how or why the stigma exists?
I think it's still existing because I think there's a belief that people believe it won't change. I do. I truly believe that people believe, hey, going to therapy won't change this, so I'm not going to go. I'll deal with what I do know, even though it's a level of discomfort, it's unhealthy. But I'll deal with this because I know what it's like,
It's
as
familiar.
opposed to the unknown. And so people, strangely enough, people would rather sit in something that's familiar, but it's unhealthy, and it doesn't feel good, but you know exactly what this looks like.
And you know what
as
to expect.
opposed to as opposed to what the unknown is. So I'll give you an example. I shared with one of my own stories. Man, I battled alcoholism for a long time. And you know what the biggest thought was for me to stop drinking? I would rather sit in this feeling of drinking because I was depressed, didn't like myself, didn't like the way that I looked in the mirror, all of these things. I would rather deal with that than the unknown of what my life would be like if I stopped drinking. And I look back at it now and I said, Rashad, that's a really irrational way of thinking. Because my thought process was, if I stop drinking and I go out and socializing and talking to women,
what are you going to do?
And hanging out with the homies, man, what would I do?
Could I play golf? Think about you?
Could I play golf without having a shot of Hennessy before the round? It's like, man, what will I do? And because of the fear of the unknown, it kept me in a very stagnant place. And so I think the same thing relates to our own experiences. I'd rather stay here because staying here provides comfort, and the unknown is scarier than what I'm actually going through.
That's deep. That's deep.
And I think as a community, it keeps us stuck. Think about people that have experienced bad relationships. I'll stay with this person because I know what it looks like, as opposed to the unknown.
Think about it.
I think I've done it as well, right? Think about substance abuse. I'll stay in this space because I don't know what this looks like. And we could think about it from any aspect. A job. I'll stay at this job that I hate. They're not paying me my worth, but I know exactly
done that too.
What I'm going to get Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
I know what my check is. I know
health insurance. I know what my check is going to look like. I got a parking spot, right? As opposed to, man, this is not for me. So I think that fear continues to have us in a place of stigma. And then I think the other element too is trust. I think as a people, if we're being honest, Black people, people of color, I think it's still this element, man. I don't trust you because I think that
I can see that.
You may say, hey, well, you know what? Medication, I don't want to get addicted to any psychotropic medications.
Yeah.
Right. You don't know my experience. That's why typically people of color, when they go to therapy, who do they want to be their therapist? People of color. Similar, right? They believe similar experiences, similar worldviews, because I feel like I can trust you. And that lack of trust keeps people stuck as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been in a few of those situations that you just.
I think I've been in every one of them that I mentioned. To be honest with you.
So you're very active in the Baltimore community. How do you see the community involvement playing a role in supporting mental health? I know there's a lot of organizations out there now dealing with mental health in the community. So how do you see that playing a role?
I think the community, people that have a role, like a community, say activist, and I kind of use rabbit ears to say that piece. I don't consider myself a community activist. I see myself as just someone that's really concerned and wants to help.
Gotcha.
And I think that people that have any platform, big, small, or indifferent, I think it's almost imperative to talk about mental health. Why? And you don't have to be a therapist, right, to actually do it, because I think that most of the societal ills that we see in our community, let's say AKA specifically in Baltimore City, mental health is somewhere involved in the picture. Right? Whether it's violence, whether it's I think it's health, whether it's just crime, whether it's education, all of these different things that make up whether community is going to thrive or not thrive, I think mental health is there. And I think that people that have these platforms, you got to talk about mental health, right? Because it's mental health is a part of us in our community that we can't escape because it's literally everywhere. And when you have people that are thriving better in the space of their mental health, whatever environment that they're in, that environment is going to be a little bit better because a healthier person is in that environment. If a healthier child comes into a school, that school can be 0.0001% better because that's one child that's healthier. If 5 kids in the class are healthier mental health wise, emotionally, psychologically, guess what? That classroom is going to be a little bit better. Now imagine if classroom of 30 kids, 15 of them are well and their mental health needs are being accounted for, being cared for. That classroom is going to be better. Imagine if the teachers themselves,
right?
The school is going to be better. The workplace, right? And I can go on and on and on, right? So imagine what we see here a lot in Baltimore with crime. Baltimore is, historically known for a really tough place in terms of crime. But guess what? A lot of the crimes that are being committed, people are mentally unwell. So imagine if these people had access to mental health, then a lot of what we see is it's not going to happen. Relationships. A lot of people that I see, couples, they're not well. And you have two unwell people in a relationship. What's the odds of that working? Slim and none. So just and I'm saying all this to say, from a community perspective as a whole, I think we have to continually put more attention on mental health because if individuals not well, the community won't thrive.
Yeah. I was reading an article one time. I forget where I was reading it. But it just forced me to Google it now. Baltimore City, mental health issues. It's, I don't want to say rampant. It's high. Statistics are high.
Extremely.
Higher than a lot of other cities, surprisingly. I'm looking at it right here, and it's like 28.9% people reported lifetime mood disorders, and almost 86% reported anxiety disorders, 21% substance abuse and dependence. That's just in Baltimore City. How do we address an issue like this? Because it affects everyone, and it's hard to believe that the numbers are so high for Baltimore City. What's so special about the city that these numbers are so high?
Actually, I don't think it's hard to believe. Let me tell you why. Think about what an individual living in Baltimore, regardless of age and socioeconomic status, right, potentially could be exposed to on a daily basis.
Okay.
Right? Just think about it. Anxiety. I'm in a community where there's an element of fear there that can make me pretty anxious, right? And then these are just basic level things. Substance abuse, right? We know that Baltimore, again, historically has been known as what? The heroin capital of the world, right? Yeah, like the substance abuse issue. Many people are engaging in substance abuse just to deal with some of the mental health things, right? So many people are engaging in drinking or this form of a drug or this just to deal with the mental health piece, just to be able to function.
Right.
So it's really not surprising to me. Honestly, I thought the numbers would be a little bit higher. I mean, a little bit higher. And then let's think of like PTSD. Imagine growing up in an environment where you hear gunshots or you saw your neighbor was arrested, where you knew that there was domestic violence taking place in an apartment next to where you lived at, or one of your classmates was murdered, or just driving along the city and you see tennis shoes hanging because you know somebody was murdered there. So just imagine that, the PTSD.
And then over time, you start to normalize a lot of these things.
Yes.
I heard that even the sounds of fire engines, police sirens,
yes,
constantly, adds to that as well.
Absolutely.
Subconsciously.
And what happens is a lot of that is stored in your body. A lot of trauma is still stored in it's literally stored in your body. And so over time and over time and over time, it's something that's like literally in your body, right? I was in 1997. I was shot, Pennsylvania Avenue. I was shot at close range, right? I wanted to be a drug dealer at the time. I thought that was the greatest life route to go. The bullet hit me and I said, that's not it. This is not for me, right? I always joke with people, say I wanted to be Tupac. The bullet hit my leg, maybe not so much. But I can tell you, and we are far removed from 1997, but I could tell you that if I hear a car backfire or a firecracker, I have a response. It's very triggering. It's very, very triggering to me, because I know what that experience is like, right? And so my experiences lead me to believe that I don't want anybody to sit behind me. And I'm far removed from that. I'm a therapist, I'm a professional, but that's still, you can't sit behind me. If I'm jogging late at night, right? And somebody's like behind me, my brain says, move to the other side of the street. I need you to know that I see you, because my body is saying, all right, it's fight or flight, because that experience has stuck with me. So again, imagine how many people have had just really challenging experiences, and that it's sort of, you have to work hard to get it out of your system.
So that's very interesting. I kind of want to circle back, because based on what you just said, right? If that was my experience, just growing up, if I was running down the street, like you said, jogging, and I noticed someone coming up behind me, moving over, across the street, right? Do you teach your kids that? Do you teach your kids awareness? Do you teach your kids a level of awareness based on your life experiences?
Unequivocally 110% yes.
And then is that good or bad? Like, is that part of the trauma that we pass on? Or
man, it's a great question. So to answer the first portion of it is yes, I teach my kids to be aware. And I think that's a great question, because I've done a million podcasts and I've never been asked that. I think that in that level of awareness that I'm teaching them, I could be unintentionally sending a level of anxiety to them based on my own experience. And I've never thought about that. So I teach my kids that, hey, you need to be aware. So there's a place that's synonymous with Baltimore in basketball in the summertime, the Dome, East Baltimore.
Okay.
So this past summer, actually 2 summers ago, was their first time playing in that, environment, which is a great place for summertime hoops. But at the end of the day, you just got to be,
aware.
You have to be aware. And so when we get out of the car, one of my kids would kind of just, lackadaisical and walking inside. It's like, it's summertime in Baltimore. We need to step. Well, Dad, why? And I'm explaining to her. And then I noticed the following summer, they got out the car and they sort of ran right in. And maybe without even thinking, I was passing on this level of sort of anxiety,
yeah.
right? And it's a delicate balance.
It's
like, teach a moment, hey, you got to be aware, but I don't want them to be, afraid. There's certain times when we're driving, and not just in Baltimore, because I love Baltimore. This is my spot. Might be anywhere, might be in New York. And my kids will, certain areas that they're in, if the locks aren't on, where the red light, they're going to hit the lock. And there's a part of me that says, yeah, I want you to be aware, but I don't want you to carry on this level of sort of like hyper vigilance, right? And always be in this fearful state. And that's a tough thing to do, because you have to be aware, but it's not healthy to carry on that, because it's stored in your body,
Yeah.
right? This perpetual state of something is going to happen.
Yeah. I want to throw this curveball at you. I've never asked anyone this before, but I do have a theory about it. Especially in light of the DEI dismantling across the country, right? This is my theory, right? I believe that in order for us to move forward as a people, when I say people, I mean people, not just black, not just white, as humans. In order for us to move along, to get along, to live in a place of a harmonious place, right? And I'm probably gonna get on me about this, right? I don't even know if I should say this. When it comes to our history as a people, as black people in this country, at what point in time do we stop teaching it so that we are able to move forward as human beings and change the lens of the kids that are coming up? If this child over here, Susie, doesn't know white Susie, doesn't know about slavery, or she's raised in a household that is inclusive and loving of all people, those households do exist, right? They do,
absolutely,
right? But if she grew up in that type of household, right, and then my daughter grew up in the same type of household, they grow up together. They get along. The racism is not there with them, right? It stopped with them because they don't know it, right? And like I said, I know I'm probably gonna get slammed up and down for saying this. Prime example, growing up with my dad, right? Black, militant father. I grew up in an area that was predominantly white. And when I went to school, I was one of 3 black kids in the entire school. Probably the school district, to be honest with you. And my dad taught me our history, right? It was nothing to come home from school, eat dinner, and watch Eyes on the Prize, right? Or watch Roots, Malcolm X, and going to school with Malcolm X hat on, Malcolm X sweatshirt on, right? So I was very aware, and at times I was very what's the word that I'm looking for? Uneasy, being the only black person there had some, I guess, animosity to me, just knowing history, right? And I'm in a situation where, in my mind, it's like segregation. Why? Because I'm the only one, I'm the only one here, right? So that to me, that was traumatizing growing up. It was, right? And I would never put my child in that position, any of my children in that position. But I do believe that, and this is based on my experience, right? There's a level of searching for the right word. I feel some type of way. How about that?
Mm.
I just feel some type of way. Even now, if I'm in a situation's majority white folks, I feel some type of way. Right? Based on how I feel, that's how I came up with the idea or the thought process that two kids growing up not knowing what racism is, right? The other side of that coin is we cannot afford not to teach our kids our history.
So I think to answer your question, I don't think that we can ever stop.
We can't.
Right? I don't think that we can ever stop.
But because of that, I don't think we can ever move forward either.
I will offer a little bit of pushback there. I think we can move forward because I think moving forward is not dependent upon not teaching, right? I think kids have to know it. Now, the generation of kids now, if we teach it, is it going to resonate with maybe like you and I? Certainly not, because their experiences are different, right? They have multicultural friends. They are having these different experiences, right? My kids have had more friends of different races and cultures and ethnicities up until 15 years in their life than I've had my entire life. So that's different from them, right? But I don't think that we can ever stop teaching them. They should know. And as you were talking, one of the things I thought about, man, I think it would be damaging to some kids to find out history of Black and brown people on their own and not being taught. It's like, wow, we did this. We did this. We invented this. We had these great leaders and things were like this. I think that would be damaging to them finding that out on their own as opposed to somebody teaching them. Now, teaching them again, I just don't think that they're going to be as receptive because they're so far removed from it, because a lot of their parents are so far removed from it because it doesn't impact us the same way. It kind of makes sense. Like I personally have never I've experienced overt racism while I was in Oregon, but I've never experienced it over a sustained period of time where, somebody said you can't drink from this fountain or you can't go to this school. I've never experienced it like that. So the impact on me was much different. So when I talk about race and racism and these things, when I talk about it to my kids, it's different because my experiences were not that of my mom or dad. Kind of makes sense. But I do think we have to teach them though. But then it's like we're teaching them. I don't know if it's just for the sake of teaching them, because I think the impact is just it's just different, man. This world is different, right? Their friends are different. They can touch base with a kid in China because of social media.
Yeah.
I mean, their experience is just culturally just completely different than mine.
I think a lot of times it's the parents that could potentially hold the kids back.
Yep.
Right. What I mean by that is my traumas, right? Based on what I know, based on my life experiences, shape how I raise my kids, right? And this is where that internal struggle for a child can come in, because your parent is showing you one thing or raising you a certain way, right? You go out into the world and it's like, oh no, but I like this kid right here. I like, playing with this person, right? But that kid's parent could have the polar opposite view of myself, right? So that parent raising that child, me raising my child, causes that inner conflict in the child, because the child wants to be here. They want to play with this child right here, right? I don't want you to play with that kid because I don't like the way their parent thinks, right?
And then how
struggle
do
for
you
a child,
differentiate that, right? Allowing your kid to grow and allowing them to form their own experiences. You use the term lens earlier, and I use that a lot with my clients. Do you allow your kids to look at race and racism through their own lens, or do you allow your traumas to sort of blur the lens that they look at it through?
Yeah.
And that's kind of right. So I believe the concept I'm gonna teach my kids and have taught my girls about racism and racism, especially during the George Floyd time.
Okay.
I mean,
how old were they then?
They're 15 now, so maybe 6 years ago. So 9 to 10, we went through books and we went through a deep dive in, Black history, right? And I'm teaching them these things so they are aware of it. Because it's like, Dad, well, what happened with this guy and this police officer? I actually took a trip to Minnesota and we went to the site, the George Floyd site, and it was a very surreal moment for me with my mom and dad and my kids, and we're literally standing near the outline, the chalk outline of his body. And it was a surreal experience. I'm glad I did this for my kids. They didn't understand, but I'm teaching them about this. And so I teach them, but I also allow them to develop the lens in which they see race and racism. I don't want my experiences to blur the lines, right? About anything. My experiences, whether it's police officers, whatever that is, I want you to formulate your own, but I want you to have some background knowledge too.
Has that caused you to be more or cautious, protective of your children, like especially when you're out in public? Like you know, as an adult, you know what to expect, you know what to look out for, right? Are you on more, I guess, of alert? Absolutely. Right, knowing that your kids don't have that knowledge, they don't have that experience.
Absolutely.
Right.
Hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
Hyper vigilant. And it's interesting that we're talking about this from a mental health dad perspective. I actually, this may sound funny, I drive differently when my kids are in the car when they're not. Yeah. And what I mean by that is there's certain places that if I can avoid a certain area, I'm going to drive, I'm going to go a different route when I have my kids. Now, if it's just me, I'm okay.
You can take the shortcut.
I'll take a different way. But if I have them in a car, I might get on the highway as opposed to going through certain parts, right? When I'm out with my kids, if I'm walking in the Target and I have my kids, I'm a different version of Rashad than when I'm walking by myself because my brain is a therapist and have had some life experiences. My brain is just scanning, right? I walk really quickly because I've been robbed several times, so I'm stepping with the mission. With my kids with me, I'm in just an extremely, I'm vigilant by myself, but I'm over the top vigilant when I have my kids with me because my brain says they don't know, dad is there, look out for this, that, and the third, but they don't see what I see, right? If I'm going to certain events, could be a baseball game.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a different version of myself crossing the street with them because it's like, this protective piece of being like a dad that they don't see.
Kids are very aware these days, right? Do you think they notice that? Do you think they pick up on that when you guys are out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they ever ask you like about it? Like why?
I think a few years ago, one of them said, Dad, I think it was like crossing the street somewhere like downtown Baltimore. And 2 years ago, so probably 13. And my initial response was like to reach out and grab their hands because that's what I've done, for all their life, right? Grab their hands, making sure. And one of them was like, Dad, I'm a teenager now. I can walk across the street. And it was like, all right. Now that's like a small example. It's like, all right. But that's just the dad in me.
Yeah.
And they've sensed it.
Yeah.
They've sensed that at different times. I'm just scanning.
Yeah.
I'll give you another quick example. We went to a basketball game last year, Baltimore City Championship basketball game at Morgan State. And my experience is that when a game lets out, two teams that, have a pretty big fan base, Edmonton and City, it's like, all right, I'm going to let the crowd disperse first.
Or leave early.
Right? Leave early. And so toward the end of the game, my kids were sitting with their teammates. They were watching the game. And they got up and they just like walked. And like, I'm literally hyped. Like, what are you doing? And they were like, Dad, we just walk. And I'm giving them the education. I said, we're in Baltimore City. You just don't walk in with the crowd.
Yeah.
You never, like, no, we leave early or we let everybody get to their car and then we're trailing.
Right.
So that's like an example. Now, if it was me, myself, I know that I can step, if I can sense anything, if I hear somebody argue, it's different. Right. My kids ask me that when we go to events, why do you park? You always back your car in. My brain says, if something happens,
easy exit, quick exit.
Right. And so, my kids don't get that. Dad, why do you try to get to places really early? Because I want to get a good parking spot. Wow. Because if something happens, I need to be gone.
Yeah. And these are life lessons, man. Like, not a lot of people get these little tidbits,
But again, and you had me thinking about that question from earlier, man. That was a dynamic question. I'm thinking now, am I actually passing on my anxiety? So now I'll be even more mindful. So it's like protective, but I don't want you to always feel what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I don't want you to feel that, right? I'm better equipped to deal with that level of anxiety as opposed to I don't want you as a 15-year-old to feel that.
Right. But if they ask you, then it's like you got to tell them why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right. When my daughter was born, I had this idea that I wanted to write this book of all of the things that I want her to know.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's how to invest money, whatever it is, right? I started that book because these are things that I want you to know. If I were not to be here tomorrow, you can look at this book and there's tips and tidbits in that book that help me, that I learned, throughout life, that helped me. I hope that it would help her, or I see value in the information for her. So there is a fine line because they need to know what they need to know. I think maybe it's how we shape it or how we say it to them. Because everything that although I posed that question to you earlier, I do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what got me thinking about it. But I'm like, it's necessary. I need to do this. How do I say it so that she can receive it? Maybe without being anxious, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be said. What I have to say has to be said to you because you need to, you need to learn. You need to know it. And it's that fine line, but that introspective thought process is how I came up with that question.
Yeah, and it's as I was thinking, it's so many things for fathers that, especially fathers with daughters, that we have to teach them, but we have to teach them in a way that we don't want them to be fearful.
Yeah.
But we got to like teach them to look out for certain things. Like pretty soon, I don't know, maybe the next year and a half, my kids, somebody will have a crush on them. They might have a crush on somebody else. And it's like, I want to teach them, but I don't want to make them, like fearful and not ruin that first have a crush on somebody experience. But all right, I'm a guy. When God says this, right? You got so
man. Let me tell you,
it's a very fine line.
Yeah,
it's a very fine line.
I had my first experience with a scenario like that. My little cousin, she's probably 33, 34. She's like a little sister to me, right? So my first experience was her going off to college. Now I've been in college, right? I told her. She went to North Carolina A&T. I told her before she stepped foot on that campus, look out, listen for, yo, you trying to watch a movie? We all know what the fuck that means.
So I told her, I was like, listen, you ain't trying to watch no movies. You good. And I told her what it meant. And she actually found herself in those situations where she, came back to me and said, it happened exactly how you said it was going to happen. Yeah. Because I've done it. Right? My experiences. Right?
And that's the hard part of the challenging part of being a dad, right? Is to, there's certain experiences that our kids, we're going to have to allow them to live it. We can give them all the background information, the love, the care, the guidance, protection.
That's the part I hate.
But it's going to have to be lived. And that's the part for me that used to literally keep me up at night.
Yeah.
Because I'm a therapist, but my anxiety was high. My anxious brain. Man, what's going to happen? And then it's like we give our kids all the tools. If I give you all the tools and you're on the job, at some point I got to trust that you're going to pull out the right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
And understand if you pull out the wrong tool, you pull out a hammer and you hit your thumb when you needed a screwdriver. I can be there for you after the fact, but I can't be there for you to prevent everything.
Yeah.
And maybe because you pulled out the hammer as opposed to the screwdriver, you'll pay attention next time because whatever that pain was. And so, man, fatherhood is besides my relationship with God, man, it's amazing, but it is very anxiety producing at times.
Yeah, man.
Because you want to protect them from everything.
Yeah. And I suspect the older that they get, the more anxiety starts to set in.
Yeah, because they're exposed to more.
Yeah.
So when my kids and, when they were in pre-K, it was like, all right, I know that it's 1,000 set of eyes on them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
First grade, it's a little bit less, but a lot of eyes. Fifth grade, not as many eyes on them in terms of protection.
Yeah.
Now it's like in high school, it's like, like you're making a lot of decisions on your own. So I'm just praying that the foundation that I'm giving you
is there.
I'm giving you because now you're exposed to more. But I'm still that dad.
Yeah.
Like just that dad is like, and not to belabor this point about passed down trauma, man, I'm literally thinking about my mother. My mother is a worry wart. And I think that my mother actually passed down a lot of worry into me, which in turn, sometimes my kids are like, Dad, chill, we all right. My mother passed it down. Man, I'm 47. If it rains or snows, my mother will literally call me the night before. Hey, Rashad, just to let you know, it's going to be snowing. I'm like, Mom, I'm almost 50. I know how to drive in the rain and the snow. I got it. Put your seatbelt on. And I'm like, Mom, I'm almost 50. But that's just who she is.
Yeah.
And I find myself doing that with the twins now. So, man, I got to be always cognizant of like, all right, allow them to grow.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you're always going to be dad. Man.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, Rashad, man, this has been enlightening.
It's been dope, man.
I appreciate you for stopping through. We got to get out on the golf course. 5-iron. You ever heard of 5-iron?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you told me about it.
Okay, I just went there for the first time.
Okay, how was it?
The other day. I loved it, man. I was there for like 4 hours. Because you can go and play golf in the bay. They got pool tables, ping pong tables, but it's also a restaurant and bar. So you can sit and eat, So I was there for like 4 hours.
That's enough to play around.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
So we definitely going to have to get out, man, one of these days. But thank you for stopping through.
Man, I appreciate it. I'm going to ask you one question before we conclude.
Sure.
I want to make this my official bid is can I recruit you for the Zeta Sigma golf tournament? Have you on my team? Because I'm not there yet. So I could be like the official player / hype man. So when we win, we can hoist another trophy.
Yeah, we can make that happen, man. We can make that happen for real. We can make that happen.
Got you.
I'll bring the crew. We can make that happen.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
This has been another episode of Black Daddy Country Club. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to the channel. This way you will stay updated on new releases, upcoming events, and the latest in merch. And don't forget to share with a friend, blackdaddy.com.